Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sudden Wealth. If you do enjoy the content, please consider dropping that like and subscribe. As I mentioned, I'm between traveling, so the setting is somewhat different, and it will be for the next few weeks. Um, we are approaching an important event, which is the Brics meeting and the rumors around they coming out with, let's call it a new currency. So basically, for those who don't know, BRICS is Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa, some of the largest economies in the world, and countries with a huge population. The idea and the rumors is that they will come up with a unified currency, and that currency will be backed by a basket of commodities in order to give it value. So, for example, the reason why, if you look at global trade, about half of it is done in US dollars, but in yuan, meaning the Chinese currency, is less than 5%. The reason for it is the lack of trust in the Chinese government and in the Chinese currency as a whole. But in theory, if you peg it to a basket of commodities, that meaning you can redeem the currency into that commodity. So let's say when the US when we were in the gold standard, if you had $35, you would get an ounce of gold. So that's what I'm talking about. In theory, that would give value to the currency, would remove the uncertainty part, and that way the BRICS um, would become a viable currency to compete. And by the way, Russia did peg its currency to gold a while ago, and what happened was even last year, where the US dollar went up quite a lot, the Russian ruble actually uh, was not hammered that much, and I think in certain parts of the year was actually up versus the dollar. And that's the point, right? We currently have a system in which we have a paper currency, and the currency says the value of it, it's purely based on two things: the trust of the people that tomorrow that currency will still hold value, and the fact that you are basically required to pay taxes in that currency. Uh, what has been seen, particularly over the last few years, but with the Russian war, is that the US has the power to completely annihilate countries if they want by removing them from the SWIFT payment system, by sanctioning them, all those kind of stuff, which in my opinion was a huge mistake by the US because the reserve currency needs to be neutral. If it starts taking sides and basically bullying people around, then countries, enemies, and friends will look for alternatives. The enemies, of course, the enemies or countries who are a bit tired of the one country dominance will be the ones trying to find it the quickest. And even the friends will be incentivized to do it. Just note the meetings of France, Germany, and the UK with China and their comments around, de-dollarization. And one thing should be clear: yes, there will be a process of de-dollarization. The dollar is the fourth or fifth reverse currency, which means four or five before them stop being that, which means it's perfectly possible. However, these kind of things do not happen over 1 year, 2 years, even 5 years. It takes at least a decade to really see meaningful change. But yes, I do think in the future the dollar will no longer be the reserve currency. The ideal reserve currency, in my opinion, would be crypto like Bitcoin, or it doesn't need to be Bitcoin, can be other one which is better, because it's not bound to any government, it's not bound to people, and basically it's a truly international asset. But this trend will be very crucial, this de-dollarization, not in the next 5 minutes, but over time, because the US has had the privilege of spending, importing, so living way ahead of where they should without paying the price, either in terms of inflation or higher taxes. And that is possible because whenever the Federal Reserve prints money, more than half of it actually goes abroad. So we in the US export inflation across the globe, while other countries import it. So of course, if they stop being the reserve currency, that will stop, and the US will need to pay. Well, the US will need to live within their means. No longer possible to live on the credit card bills anymore. So I do think this summit, which is happening, this Brics meeting, which I think is happening in August, I think it will be a very important meeting to see where they stand, where they're moving to, and that is a more macro impact rather than short-term movements. But I mean, people are still somewhat surprised, but this has happened in similar times in history before. So we'll see. I think it will be probably good for the rest of the world, and it's probably going to be bad for the US. So thank you very much, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.